Getting Everything You Can Out of All You've Got by Jay Abraham. This book is for anybody that's interested in really applying sound marketing principles, learning them and applying them to the business for growth in a way that's probably not going to be the way that your competitors are doing, which is going to give you a very powerful and distinct advantage in the world of business. It's going to more than likely increase the success that you get. And it's built on the foundation that Jay believes that if you think like everyone else, then you're probably going to get the same results. So it's important to learn how to think differently. And we're not talking about random thinking differently. We're talking about figuring out what other people are doing that are successful in different industries, figuring out what works for them, learning how they got to where they are, essentially critical thinking, and taking those concepts and applying it to our business to produce results. The reality is, in the business world, most businesses fail within the first year. And after 4 or 5 years, a large percentage of the businesses that were successful will fail. There's only a small percentage of businesses that actually achieve success. And if you study those that run those successful businesses, oftentimes you'll find that they think differently. Okay? They see reality differently. They do things differently. And it's interesting because there's a lot of knowledge in this world about building businesses. But there is some knowledge that can appear to be kind of contrarian and unique and different. And there's a saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And when you're ready to think differently because you want to look at how you can grow your business and you realize that it's obvious, but it's elusive obvious, that it's just better to study what the successful people are doing and not really listen to the information that's being spread by those that haven't achieved success, and recognize that a lot of times those that have achieved success don't actually go out and teach this information because they're constantly building new and new businesses. And one of the ways to get access to them is through mentorship or working for them. It's actually quite rare to meet people and come across information that actually works to create business results, because those that are very successful at it are building businesses, and those that are maybe teaching it don't necessarily have the real pragmatic hands-on experience or access to people that have the hands-on experience to create the results. So thus, interestingly enough, most information that's contained in this world about business and marketing is more than likely going to orient a person towards being the majority. Because think about it for a moment. These people that are starting businesses that eventually fail aren't stupid people. They're learning in the process. They're getting educated. It just so happens that the information that they're learning is not contributing to their success. So that being said, what is the information that does contribute to success? I believe that information is contained within this book. And why would I say that? Well, first of all, I've got experience building an IT business. I spend a lot of time working with businesses who have successfully built businesses from scratch. And I'm involved with a number of businesses and projects, and all of them have a successful track record. And the very things that are covered in this book is the things that we're doing to some degree. And what I'm interested in doing now, and I hope that you're interested in doing also, is applying these principles to an even higher degree and magnitude. But this first starts by looking at what thinking differently means. Now, Jay is all about thinking different, and reasonably so. I mentioned this earlier. If you think like everyone else, you're going to get the same results like everyone else. And if you think differently, but differently based on how successful people think in the context of business building, then the statistical probability is going to go higher that you're going to be able to create success. So I'm going to link a video in the description of a presentation that Jay did, a 10-minute presentation at the Genius event on thinking differently, and I recommend that you watch it. So we're going to talk about some of the elements that I pulled from this book that feeds into the concept of thinking differently. And we're going to talk about Jay's 3 ways to grow your business, which, by the way, are very pragmatic. Only 3 ways to grow your business. They are increase the number of clients, number 1. Number 2, increase the average size of the sale per client. And number 3, increase the number of times the clients return and buy again. As obvious as these may seem, there are many creative, unique, different ways of approaching this nonlinear to achieve these results. Now, think about this for a moment. Let's say you have 1,000 clients. They average $100 per transaction, and they make 2 purchases within a year. Well, 1,000 clients times 100 times 2 is $200,000. You have a $200,000 a year business. What if we were to increase each of these areas? Number of clients, average size of sale per client, and the number of times the clients return and buy again by just 10%. What would happen to the results? Well, 1,100 times 110 times 2.2 is 266,200. So a mere 10% increase across the board expands your income by 33.1%. Now, if it was that easy, everyone would do it. And why do most people not do it? That's because they don't have access to different ways of doing things that are highest and best use, high leverage, that when added to each of these 3 areas can actually prove minimally to produce those numbers of 10%. And they can consistently do this every year by adding more, and multiplying with focus and discipline. And interestingly enough also is that most businesses are not focused on creating value for their clients, and they're, on the flip side, interested in figuring out how they can get the most money out of their clients. When the truth is that if you could create more value for your clients, it will increase the number of clients you have. It will more than likely increase the average size of spend with you because they will pay a premium for better quality, better service, and there's ways of doing it without having to use a lot of your resources, so it keeps your profit margins high. And just by creating that valuable experience with your clients, they're more than likely come back and buy more things. So this starts, if we want to get into this, we'll get into 3 ways to grow your business in a moment. We want to start by thinking differently. So let's get into that. We want to start thinking more in alignment with what successful business owners are doing. Industry A doesn't know anything about the methods Industry B uses. Correspondingly, Industry C is totally unaware of the way Industry B sells or markets, and on and on. By helping you study and identify the fundamental principles that drive the successes in hundreds of other industries, you're able to pick and choose the most powerful, effective, state-of-the-art breakthrough approaches to introduce to your industry. So number 1, we want to be investing time studying what other people are doing outside of our industry. Now, you'll see this a lot. The tech circle, techie entrepreneurs surround themselves with other techie entrepreneurs. Restaurateurs surround themselves with other restaurateurs. What Jay is suggesting is that go outside of your industry, figure out what they're doing to solve problems. Chances are they might have the same problem that you have, and they might have a creative, unique way of solving that problem. If you take that solution, which might be more cost-effective, faster, and so forth, and you apply it to your business and your industry, now all of a sudden you will have a greater output. If you're fishing and you have one pole with one line in the water, you'll be able to catch only a limited number of fish. But if you use 10 poles and you put 10 lines with 10 different baits in the water at the same time, your fish catching potential will significantly increase. Another way of thinking. Most people are thinking too linear. They have one product and service in which they use to force into the marketplace, rather than looking at what the client is interested in buying before, during, or instead, or after, and figuring out how they can create or partner with others to provide those solutions in exchange for money. So by diversifying not randomly, but value-based on what it means to a client, we're essentially creating new ways of penetrating the market, which will create additional revenue streams, or might just permanently replace your initial revenue stream. This is one of the reasons why, again, I've left corporate in 2009, so I'm going on to, almost 10 years. And I've met a lot of people along this journey, other entrepreneurs who have started businesses and they've grown to success, and some have failed. The ones that have grown to success Realize the importance of pivoting based on what is valuable to the customer, to the client. A lot of times what happens is we have this product or service and we're like, this is the best thing. And what we want to do is we want to go out and sell it to everyone. And a lot of times you start out, you realize that it's not resonating with the marketplace, but then you get forceful and so forth. And if it doesn't work, people just give up. What they fail to recognize is that value is what the client sees as valuable, what the prospect sees as valuable. Now, there's ways of persuading and so forth, but why not make it easier and figure out what they're already interested in and adjust and even modify or even move into something else to serve that client or prospect and then generate that income and then reinvest that income back into other business building activities. Those that do the statistical probability of success goes up way higher. Now that being said, let's talk about breakthroughs, because breakthroughs is what we want. And breakthrough thinking is what we want to facilitate. So what does it mean and how do we go about doing it? Essentially what we're looking for is quantum leaps. Now I'm a fan of making incremental gains. One of my favorite books is The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. I also really like Darren Hardy's Compound Effect. What I also like is the U-squared strategy, the quantum leap strategy by Price Pritchett. I might do a discussion on that book coming up. But what we're looking at is some opportunities that exist within our awareness that when executed produce breakthrough results. So not just a few percent increase, but a 20 or 33% increase based on, like, for example, we talked about our ways of growing the business, doing 3 changes to the 3 parts of growing your business, 10% each produce 33%. I'm interested in stuff like that also on top of incremental gains, both. So breakthroughs is where it's at. Your greatest success and prosperity in business and life will come from your ability to create your own breakthroughs. So what does this mean? This means we got to become breakthrough generating machines. Now, I meet a lot of people and they have a lot of ideas. And their ideas might sound nice theoretically, but once applied will produce marginal results, if any. And these ideas are generated based on them looking around to see what everyone else is doing and then kind of copying the ideas. And, that's fine. Get started with that. But what I believe is, why not set yourself up so you come up with unique problem-solving ideas and opportunities that can be executed upon that are different, that create something new in the marketplace or solve a problem faster, and that's where and actually execute upon it and produce results. Those are the kind of ideas that we want, breakthrough ideas. And those are generated by, yes, being aware what others are doing, but then looking at how others also do things differently to produce results and figuring out how we can borrow that philosophy or principle or process and apply it to what we're doing right now, either as a whole or as a part. So the best way to do this is essentially spend time with others in different industries and figure out how they do things. Study topics that you aren't necessarily interested in and look for connects. Now, those of you who are part of my mind map training program recognize that one of the things that I do in creating mind maps is incorporate the 4 quadrants of learning. So let's talk about these for a moment because this is important. So number 1 are the why learners. They essentially want to know why things work the way they do. They're the salespeople. They want to go out and tell people how it works. So they're deeply interested in why things work. Number 2 is the what learners, the theoretical breakdown, the facts, the scientific data. The theory is what they're looking at. And that's what they believe helps them at a high level of comprehension. Number 3 is the how learners. They want to learn by doing. They want to take information and actually go out and do it so that they can get a hands-on experience and learn through doing. And number 4 is the what if learners. Okay, what if learners look at how things work in the certain learning context, or they take what they're learning and figure out how to apply it in another area. So what we're saying here is that all 4 of them are important, but one of them is going to help us with breakthrough thinking. Now, arguably they're all going to help, but one of the areas we want to focus on is what if. What if learners make up a small percentage of the population? They are the entrepreneurs. They're the ones that figure out what somebody's doing in one area and then borrow that principle and apply it to another area to create profits. They're constantly looking at how something works right now and where else it can be applied and done. So if you want to become more successful in the realm of entrepreneurs and you want to think differently, then constantly be looking at the different things that are going on within your awareness, your business awareness, personal life, etc., and see how that's applicable and true in another area. For example, you can take what we're learning right now, which is in the context of business building, and you can challenge yourself to see how this is applicable in personal life situations. Or you could read books based on relationships, like dating and relationships, etc. And you can figure out how concepts covered in there are applicable in the world of direct response marketing and vice versa. Okay, very important. So what is a breakthrough? Let's highlight over these. Unconventional, fresh, superior, more exciting ways of doing something. Dramatic improvements in areas that makes you more impactful, powerful, efficient, effective, productive, and valuable or inspiring to your client. Make your marketing produce 2 or 3 times the result with same or less effort. So what we want to do here is you want to apply the what if principle. Everything that I'm talking about in this video, everything that's covered in this book, we want to ask ourselves, how do we take what's covered here and apply it to our business right now? Okay, how much are we applying these concepts? How can we apply these concepts? And by doing that, it's going to facilitate more of those breakthroughs, what I like to call insights and perspectives. Facilitate the breakthroughs by looking at how all these items here that I'm talking about apply to your business. Transform your product from a commodity into a prized proprietary item no one else can offer or compete against. Let you control your business with fewer people, less payroll, less confusion, more productivity, more efficiency, and more profit. And by the way, if you can't figure out how to do these things, then it's worth noting in your study notes, looking for different books and resources to help you understand those areas of how you could do it. Because chances are people have done it. People are probably doing what you're doing right now in business with less payroll, less confusion, more productivity, and more efficiency. They are out there. How can you find them? How can you connect with them? Have they written books? Do they have seminars? Do they have anything that you can interact with, that you could study from to learn what they're doing and apply it to what you're doing right now? Let you change the entire business game you play by allowing you to totally change all the rules that remake them at will. Lets you outthink, outleverage, outmarket, outsell, outperform, out-impact, out-defend, outmaneuver, and continuously outwit your competition on every level. Right now, your competitors are constantly trying to come up with new ways to take your clients, your job, or entire business away from you. You've got to beat them to the punch. Breakthroughs are the pathway to doing it. So you're at a considerable advantage by studying what other people are doing, nonlinear ways of thinking differently, because the majority of the population tries to think like everyone else because they don't have the confidence to go beyond their current reality. Okay? Let you reinvent your business or career before some competitor does it for you. Lets you maximize your success better and longer so you can safely uncover new future successes. Lets you ethically use the power of other people's knowledge, capital, or resources to your own maximum advantage. Again, ethically win-win. Let you lower your total or totally eliminate the risk in an activity while vastly increasing the potential payoff. Breakthroughs make you unbeatable. Breakthroughs make people wealthy. So, that being said, now that we got some stimulus as to what breakthrough is about, how do we facilitate breakthrough thinking? And we already mentioned looking for different ways of accessing the same marketplace by trying different things. And we'll get into this in more detail with Jay's strategies in the 3 ways to grow your business. But let's also look at how we can calibrate ourselves to think differently, because that's so important. It's the foundation of this book. This book is designed to get you to think differently, but not in a way that's randomly thinking, abstract and non-purposeful. Think differently that's more in alignment with those that are successful in business building. Now, if you were to give this book to successful business owners and you ask them to read it and ask them to provide you thoughts on this, most likely They're going to validate the information in this book, and they're probably going to say to you, we're doing these things, or we're doing some of these things, or we could do more of these things. That's because this information is contained within this book is the information that will help you exponentially grow your business, and it's what successful business owners are calibrating themselves to do or have already done. We want to remove ourselves from the noise. This is the signal right here, okay? So how? Being opportunity focused, looking at things from an opportunity perspective, okay? Seeing opportunities where everybody else sees problems, obstacles, limitations, or boundaries, and actually constantly placing ourselves in situations that appear to be problems, obstacles, limitations, or boundaries, and staying there till we solve it. And by the way, this is also important to keep in consideration opportunity cost, because not every single opportunity is, or problem or obstacle or limitations or boundaries requires you to stay there and get you focused on there. It's not worth staying in some of them. You got to look at which opportunities have a payout. What's the payout? Are you willing to invest the time, energy, resources to figure out the solution? What is the payout in the short term or the long term? You have to be able to evaluate these things. But the key is seeing opportunities where others see problems, obstacles, limitations, and boundaries. Most people run away from these kind of things rather than dedicating some time each day to stay within there, to evoke creative thinking and nonlinear ways of thinking to solve the problem. You must invent and constantly be reinventing your own better future. So maximizing and creating breakthroughs means more than just simply getting the most profit, highest performance, greatest productivity, and effectiveness out of an action, opportunity, or investment. It also means achieving maximum results with a minimum of time, effort, expense, and risk, something a few people practice or even think about. This is Jay Abraham's highest and best use theory. And this is one of my favorite theories of Jay Abraham. Okay, one of my favorite. And the reason why is the truth is this. You only have a certain amount of time, you have a certain amount of energy, you have a certain amount of resources. And what you do with that time, energy, and resources, and we'll say opportunity cost as well, there's many things you could do. Why not sift and sort and figure out what is the items that you could do, because you can only really do one thing at a time with full presence, that's going to accelerate and move your grand strategy forward the fastest, create more value for the marketplace in which you get paid for the most, brings you the most fulfillment and joy. There's a lot of combination of elements, but what are those things? When I started to think like that, my results started to increase. I started to look at all the things I was doing, and I immediately cut out a whole bunch of things that I thought were productive, and maybe they are productive, they still produce results, but however, as opposed to what? As opposed to maybe this other thing that will accelerate my results even further, that will engage me even deeper, that will get me into flow state. We need to be thinking about that. So let's look at an example here, a couple examples, so that we can really internalize and solidify this concept and the importance of thinking differently. In 1972, a young man worked as a page in Congress. That year, the Democratic Convention nominated George McGovern to run for president against Richard Nixon. During the convention, Senator McGovern dumped his first choice to be his vice presidential running mate, Senator Eagleton. The young 16-year-old entrepreneur saw a one-time opportunity and bought up 5,000 suddenly obsolete McGovern-Eagleton buttons and bumper stickers. He paid 5 cents apiece for them. He then resold them as historical and rare political memorabilia for as much as $25 an item. There's an example of turning a problem into an opportunity, a profitable one. The founder of Nike, an avid runner, sat at his kitchen table and poured rubber into a waffle iron to create Nike's unique sole for their first running shoe. So that is resourcefulness. That is thinking differently outside of the box and taking what you have right now to figure out a solution that will solve a problem that a lot of people have based on what's within your current awareness right now. So how would you go about practicing this? Okay, so practicing this is very important. Practice. Try and uncover at least one cash windfall for your business or employer every 3 months. You remember, your goal in creating breakthroughs is to use ideas to create more value for others. It's a calibrating point. It's not about just creating breakthroughs and unique, cool ways of doing things. It's about doing it in a way that creates more value for others. That's provided that you want your business to be profitable, because you get paid for the value that you create for others. And the more value you can create, more you can get paid. Breakthroughs increase in direct proportion to the amount of networking, brainstorming, and masterminding you do with like-minded, success-driven people outside of your industry, okay? Because we want to avoid groupthink here. You get 5 or 6 people together and they're in the same industry and they're doing the same thing. They're going to come up with the same solutions and they're just going to keep validating it. That has its time and place. I think that that's valuable also. But why not diversify? Why not find people who are equally as driven, equally as successful, like-minded in their thinking, but are in different industries, and just go and sit in there and just say, look, I want to share with you stuff that we're doing that might be beneficial to you guys. And I want to hear what you guys are doing that is creating success for you guys, your revenue models, your processes, etc. I want to see. And let's see if we can kind of benefit each other. Do you mind if I sit in and we have these discussions? A lot of times people will say yes, because you offer an outside perspective and it's very mutually beneficial. The best breakthroughs take away risk or resistance from the other side, so it's easier for them to say yes than no. So think about this for a moment. Okay, you can ask people for money, like directly go up to people and say, can you give me some money? Most likely they'll say no. But if you provide value, and it's value that they consider to be valuable, then the likelihood of saying yes goes higher. Now, if you look at what are the mechanics of them saying yes, a lot of times it's the resistance or the risk of saying yes that prevents them from actually saying yes. So how can we reduce that risk? How can we reduce that resistance? We're going to talk about it, by the way. We'll talk about risk reversal when we get to it in the 3 ways. Employ as many success practices from others outside your field or industry by investigating, then modeling their philosophies and methods. Okay, model it and figure out how to take it and apply it in your industry. So now that we've calibrated our way of thinking, essentially thinking differently, let's dive in with that foundation into Jay's 3 ways to grow your business model. So there are fundamentally only 3 ways to grow your business. Number 1 is to increase the number of clients. Number 2, increase the average size of the client of sale per client. Number 3, increase the number of times the client returns and buys again. So let's start with number 1. So here's an example. I have a client whose income curve was stagnant. It doesn't matter what they sold. Pretend it's your product or service. This company had a compensation program. They paid the salespeople 10% of the profit. So if the company made $1,000 profit on a sale, the salesperson would get $100 and the company would get $900. I had them calculate what's the average new client is worth to them in dollars each time they buy, how many times that client will buy from them each year, and how many years the average client will be with them. In turn, out of the first sale, on average, resulted in about $200 profit for the company. Of that, $20 went to the salesman or the woman, and $180 went to the company. On average, the client bought 5 times a year for 3 years. So basically, each time the company got a new client, they were receiving $3,000 in cumulative profits. My solution: instead of giving the salespeople 10% of the profit on a sale to a new first-time client, give them 100% of the profit of the first sale. The company's management response was, "You're insane." I smiled pleasantly and went on to explain that as long as their salespeople maintain sales from existing clients at past levels or above, give them 100% of the profit of the first sale for every new client they bring in. They'll be 10 times more motivated to sell new clients. And every time they bring in a new client, the salesperson makes an additional $200, but the company makes an additional $2,800. So this is employing a different way of thinking to increase the number of clients we get by incentivizing the salespeople to make them even more motivated, because that's a driving factor. So what are some other driving factors that we could use to increase the number of clients? Because we all want more clients. Well, we're going to get into risk reversals, referrals, selecting our target market, unique selling proposition, host-beneficiary relationships, Let's start by unique selling proposition, because I think that this is a very important element. Your unique selling proposition is that distinct, appealing idea that sets your business apart from every other Me Too competitor. If you see yourself as just an IT solution provider, chances are you're not going to be as compelling to all the prospects that the other IT companies are targeting. What you need to do is stand out. And you can stand out by crafting a unique selling proposition. Now, there are many steps and examples covered in the book, but let's go over some examples to help us understand. So, Domino's Pizza, hot, juicy, delicious pizza delivered to your door in 30 minutes or less, or it's yours absolutely free. How do they differentiate themselves? They're saying hot, juicy, delicious pizza that's going to be at your door in 30 minutes or less. And if not, we'll buy it for you. It's free to you. That's a unique selling proposition that differentiates themselves from the other providers of pizza. In the 1960s, Avis was struggling to come up with a marketing approach that would gain them the market advantage that they desired. They needed a unique selling proposition that was very powerful. After all, Hertz was head above them in size and in market share. What did they do? They came up with a USP. We're number two, we try harder, and they demonstrated what they extended, that by extending themselves, by working harder and giving better rates, by being more courteous. Now, here's the thing about this. If you're number two, they blatantly accepted that they're number two, but they said, because we're number two, we try harder. It's very, you can say it's catchy, but it offers more value to the client. That's what it's proposing, that it gives more value to the client, which is more valuable. So they will try harder, and they're committing to try harder by doing all these other things. Nordstrom's built their department store success through one basic, unique selling proposition. If you have any problem with a purchase for any reason, bring it back for a no questions asked, 100% money back refund anytime in the future. Anytime in the future. Not in 3 days, not in 7 days, not in 30 days. If a year later you're not satisfied, if 5 years you're dissatisfied, it's not a problem. Okay, now think how powerful that is when you look at all the other options you have to buy clothes or whatever. You can go back at any time in the future and return that for 100% money back refund. Now, not everyone is going to do that, and based on that statistical probability and the risk that's being reduced, that increases the confidence in the buying, they're able to differentiate themselves, A, and number two, they're able to take the market share just by thinking differently. Financial advisor Howard Ruff built a $20 million newsletter empire back in the 80s by putting himself in a unique and distinctive position in his marketplace. Most of the other financial advisors took the position that they were big-time Wall Street pros and they were trying to appeal only to the affluent investors. Howard took the opposite approach and he said, I am the financial advisor to the middle class, and I want to protect your interests at a different level. I know how hard you work to make $1. I know how important it is to you so that you don't lose it. I know how critical your retirement monies are to you. I respect and I approach your situation differently than anyone else. So this automatically speaks to the unique pains, desires, frustrations that the middle class are experiencing, and thus likely they're going to be more compelled to want to go with him versus the other firms that don't see them from this unique perspective, okay, unique selling proposition. If you improve your unique selling proposition, you increase the likelihood of increasing the number of clients. And again, going back to our example here, every year we only need to make a commitment to do this by 10% to get considerable return when we combine it with the other two elements of the three ways to grow your business. And you can see already that most businesses don't look at it this way. So you can see how if you apply this philosophy and this way of doing things to your business, that your likelihood of success goes up higher. So next is risk reversal. Risk reversal. So there is a concept called better than risk-free guarantee. Better than risk-free. So you've heard the basic guarantee, 30 days or your money back. If you don't like it, within 30 days you can return it back for a full refund. Well, how can you make it even more compelling than your competitors that use that? Well, how about this? The better than risk-free guarantee enables you to do something that a basic guarantee or risk reversal approach does not. When you utilize a better than risk-free guarantee, you are acknowledging and rewarding the client for the value both his or her time and faith expended in favoring you with their purchase decision. When you tell me that if I'm dissatisfied for any reason whatsoever, you will not only give me a full immediate return of my purchase, but you promise me an additional reward on top, a compensation incentive for having taken the time and really valuing their opportunity costs, effort, and faith to purchase in the first place, I'm more impressed. I'm hard-pressed to say no to a proposition like that. So it's all about adjusting our risk reversal, which is essentially the money-back guarantee standard, and making it more compelling to reduce the risk. Remember, one of the things we want to do is we want to reduce the risk. We don't want to just ask people for money. We want to reduce the risk because they want to have faith that what you have to offer is going to produce the result for them. They want the result, provided you're targeting the right people. Some people might not be interested in what you have to offer. And if they're the kind that are going to buy something like that or are considering buying something like that, what's holding them on the fence usually is that they feel that there's too much at risk. So we want to look for ways to reduce that risk. Whenever two parties come together, this is a way to think about it, and always remember this. Whenever two parties come together to transact business of any kind, one side is always asking the other, consciously or otherwise, to assume more or all of the risk. If you ask someone to take on all the risk, their first inclination is not to buy. Think about this for a moment. This is even true in dating context, in personal relationship context, as much as it's true in business context. Remember the what if. So here are some examples here. Did you ever subscribe to a magazine or a newsletter, and the reason you subscribed was because they gave you a 30, 60, or 90-day no questions asked, 100% money-back guarantee, or even not ask you to pay for it up front? That's risk reversal. As president of Chrysler, Lee Iacocca took only $1 annual salary and stock options that would pay off only if he improved the company's bottom line. When you go and work for a company, by default, what a lot of people do, and there's a lot of creative applications for this. You can apply this for your career and so forth. Is they say, pay me $100,000 or pay me $1 million, and I will increase your bottom line by 10 or 15%, which is going to create whatever 1 million or 10 million return. That's a guarantee. Trust me on this one. It's better than not saying anything. But what if you were so confident? What if you actually knew? And this kind of stuff works if you have something good to offer. If you don't have good things to offer and you're not confident and you can't produce results, this stuff's not going to work, because then you're just trying to use it as a manipulative technique, and it's going to come bite you later on because you're not going to make the money. But if you're confident as a consultant and you know that you can increase their profits at the end of the year by, let's say, $1 million just by investing 2-3 hours a day, 3-4 days a week for a whole year, you could say to them, and because of your experience, you could say, look, just give me some stock option and $1 a salary. Give me only $50K. Give me only $25K, because I know I'm going to make you guys an extra whatever. And if you do your calculations right, you'll make more money by doing that. But what you're doing is you're reducing the risk. So next is referrals, right? Referrals is what helped me build my IT business. I grew my IT business to 50 plus clients in a very short time just by using referrals. Okay, I would find accountants that had access to a lot of clients. I built relationships with the accountant, and they would refer clients to me rather than going out door to door and trying to get clients. You need to figure out who can generate referrals for you, and you got to build relationships. So most people and businesses spend all their time, effort, and money on conventional marketing, advertising, or selling programs, when a fraction of that effort and virtually no expense would get them many times the results if they develop a formalized referral system. A formal client referral system will bring you an immediate increase in clients and profits, and it doesn't really cost you anything to implement. Maybe a referral fee at the most. A referral-generated client normally spends more money, buys more often, and is more profitable and loyal, and oftentimes a lot more of a pleasure to deal with, because especially in the IT world, I was really picky on the kind of clients that I took in because I didn't want a stressful client that was overly demanding and so forth. And what I found is that when I found a good pool of clients, they knew other clients or other business owners that were just like them, that were a pleasure to deal with. And I would gladly take their referrals. So a referral generated client normally spends more money, buys more often, is more profitable and loyal than most other categories of businesses that you could go after. Now, Jay has identified 93, and he sells on the Abraham website the 93 referral systems, like 93 different referral generation strategies. If you're interested in that, you can email me. Referral systems, let's look at that. Step 1, every time clients deal with you in person through your sales staff by letter, email, or on the phone, diplomatically ask them for client referrals. But first, you must set the stage. Tell your clients that you realize and enjoy doing business with them, and they probably associate with other people like them who mirror their values and quality. Tell them you'd like to extend to them the opportunity of referring their valued and trusted associates to you. Then help the client see a clear picture of who in their lives could benefit most effectively and naturally from your products and services. Tell them what kind of person or business it might be, where they are, what they are probably doing, and why they'd be benefiting. Show them what that person or entity would be doing or buying right now so that the picture is vivid. Then extend a totally risk-free, totally obligation-free sales offer. Step number 2, willingly offer to confer with, review, advise, or at least talk or meet with anyone important to that client. Offer to consult their referral or let them sample or get a demonstration of your product or service in action without expectation of purchase. So your client sees you as a valuable expert with whom they can put their friends or colleagues in touch. Now, this is very important. It's important that you treat anyone that your clients refer to you with respect and you treat the clients well. Why? Because there's nothing more fulfilling to a client, and I found this, than when you treat their referrals with a higher level or the same level of care and trust that you treated them. What that does is it furthers their business relationship with the other person. And in business, relationships are very, very important. If you mess up on a referral, you're probably not going to get another referral from that client. And if that client is very influential and knows a lot of people, then you've cut out one of your most powerful sources of revenue. Remember, we're looking to increase the number of clients here, so we must do this right. So that's referrals. And if you want to learn more about referrals and risk reversal and unique selling proposition, go back to the book. There's far more information. I'm only pulling out the points that I feel will get you started in this journey and give you the highest leverage, but there's far more. Next is your target market. So one of my favorite stories from the book is the Willie Sutton story. Willie Sutton was a famous bank robber, and everywhere, he would rob banks for many years. And one day, when he was caught, he was asked, "Willie, why do you rob banks?" And his answer was very simple and pointed. He said, "Because that's where the money is." Now, the thing about, we're not encouraging to rob banks. What we're saying here is that most of us spend far too much time, too much energy, too much opportunity cost chasing the wrong prospects, the people that will not buy. And we're trying to force and convince and do all these things, when the best thing we could do is find where our target market exists. Focus your efforts and attention on those markets, prospects, and activities that offer you the highest probability of payoff, and you'll always do better. But most people don't stop and question whether there's a better way, an accessible and qualified decision maker or source that they can reach easier and more effectively, tied into referrals, who has access to people that will buy. When you do realize that there are ways to focus on prospects who are more likely to be interested in your product or service, you will experience greater results with less effort, time, and money expended. Now, really think about that Willie Sutton story. It's one of my favorite stories because it helps recalibrate the brain, because it's very easy for us to get diverted and not focus on the money and recalibrate back into focusing on who has the highest probability of buying and how could we serve and create value for them so they could pay us and build an ongoing relationship to get more clients, but then also, have them come back again by creating trust and likability so they have that really positive experience with that first transaction with us. So here's how. Sit down with your clients' files and salespeople and make certain you have a complete, comprehensive list of your clients. Then, separate your clients by their various buying patterns or interests. Determine which clients buy what category of products or services, which ones buy larger units of sale, and which ones buy more frequently. Identify people or businesses that purchase more of specific categories of products and services or far more specialized applications. Note if there are similarities among various buying groups that point to opportunity trends. That points to opportunity trends. For example, if you discover that your biggest buyers are all doctors or chemical manufacturers, you'd be able to target more of these groups as primary prospects. See if there are geographical trends, demographic indications, or general age, family, business type, and or size factors that correlate to specific buying patterns. When you recognize what these patterns are, you can then use that knowledge to fashion propositions geared more towards that segment. Okay? Picking the right target market will amplify your efforts. Remember we talked about this earlier. Minimal input, maximum output. If you are broadly targeting, then you're not applying the highest and best use philosophy, the principle. If you apply highest and best use towards target market, then your efforts will not only allow you to really refine your marketing message, number one. Number two is you will have more time to reallocate to doing that repeatedly and thus increase the likelihood that you're going to attract more clients. Next, one of the most powerful concepts from Jay Abraham is the host-beneficiary relationships. This is very similar to referrals, or he also calls this strategic alliances or joint ventures. Here's how it works. Determine who in your marketing area is already selling to the clients you want to be reaching and who has their trust, respect, and goodwill. Very important. They would be selling something that either goes before, along with, after, instead, or follows the product or service that you sell to people. Your product or service does not compete with their product or service, but complements it. And then, step one, ask yourself, who already has this relationship with the people to whom I'm able to sell a non-competitive but related product or service? Then, once you've got the names on paper, contact these non-competing businesses and ask them to introduce your product or service to their audience. Supply them with plenty of information on what you sell and some testimonials attesting to its high quality. Once you have their attention, point out the following facts. Your product or service is absolutely non-competitive to the host's product or service. In the case where you approach a competitor, point out to them that any ancillary profits will result from reworking their list after they have drawn all the profits they can from their products. This may be especially appealing to companies who own a large one-time purchaser list. It's not going to take away or any of their income or profits that the host would ordinarily realize. It's going to augment their profits. They don't have to lift a finger or spend a dime if they'd wish to participate, and that's even better. You'll create all the marketing material, subject totally to their approval, of course. You can offer to pay all the printing, postage, or other costs, whatever email marketing costs, to avail themselves of the opportunity to joint venture with you. Okay? You'll hold them harmless. Plus, you'll unconditionally guarantee every item or service sold. The host company can have all the orders and or services routed through them for verification. And point out that particularly in those situations where the host is far removed or totally tangled to your business, it's purely bonus income for them. So the key is to find these companies that have access to your marketplace and work a deal where you could offer your products and services to them in a way that's non-competitive and actually supplements their income because you're going to give them a revenue split. Now, I've done this many times, and that's one of my key income sources. When I find these opportunities, now I don't sit down and actually go and look for these opportunities, but this is an actual great way to start a business is to be a broker like this. But as they come up and as I deem that it's worth my opportunity cost to execute upon something like this, I execute the deal. I put the deal together. I do this, I execute the deal, and I take a percentage of the profit. So let's look at some examples here. If you sell software for a company, you could contact a salesperson who works for the corporation that sells the computer hardware to the same client base and develop a mutually beneficial relationship. Visa and American Express have formed strategic alliances with airlines, automobile manufacturers, oil companies, and others that reward consumers for their particular credit card. Sears and Roebuck made hundreds of millions of dollars by promoting Allstate insurance to their clients in their stores. When major motion picture studios like Disney and Universal produce movies aimed at the youth market, they develop merchandising host-beneficiary relationships with fast food chains like McDonald's and Burger King. Perfume and makeup companies will hire and pay the salaries of the people who work at the cosmetic counters in large department stores. Some of the cosmetic companies actually own the cosmetic counter. Okay? A lot of ways of doing this, creative ways of doing it. You could see how applying thinking differently, and we've got a lot of ideas, and if you want more ideas, they're covered in this book and also in the Abraham Mindshift Challenge, can allow you to increase the number of clients. Now let's move on. Let's get into increase the average size of sale per client and some ways of doing this. So General Motors, Honda, Ford, etc. will sell you a car for, let's say, $25,000. Have you ever paid just that advertising price? Or do you buy a few extra items like radio, air conditioning, secure sunroof, warranty package, or financing? Despite our good intentions, when we go out to dinner, many of us up the value of our transaction when the waiter shows us a wine list or the dessert tray. Okay, we've all had that experience. If you can figure out how you can create value for your clients, they've already made the decision, they've already got the like and trust in you, and they're willing, and you've reduced the risk enough that they buy something, why not try to upsell and add more products and services? By doing this, what happens is that you increase the transactional value. Rather than paying $97 for whatever you're selling, a few upsells, $5, $10, $15 here, things like that. You go to a hotel, you book a hotel room, you might order room service, you might order drinks, you might order massage therapy, all kinds of things. What are ways that you could do this in your business right now? Again, we just have to focus on 10% to get that extra return and try to do that every year. And by the way, when you do that every year, let's go back to the example. It's not just going to add another $66,200 if it was based on the $200,000 example. It's going to add another 33% compounded on that. Think about that. Auto detailers are putting this theory into practice with a vengeance. Instead of simply selling cars, most dealers offers their clients an opportunity to add on a stereo system, convenient financing, security devices, a sunroof, car phone, extended warranty, and all kinds of other options to the basic purchase. As you know, they typically don't make such offers immediately after the client decides to buy the car. They don't typically make such offers, as you know, they typically make such offers immediately after the client has decided to buy the car, truck, or van. Again, this has to be done ethically, obviously. You cannot do this as a manipulation strategy that's not in the interest of the client, because if they have a bad buying experience, then they're probably not going to come back and buy again. We're going to talk about increase the number of times the client comes back and buys again. One of the determining factors is the quality of their buying. So we want to do this in a way that's actually going to be beneficial for our clients. So it's not a question of manipulating clients when they're still feeling happy, the glow of a new car ownership. The dealers are merely acknowledging the fact that the car buyers The dealers are merely acknowledging the fact that what car buyers want isn't a new set of wheels, but a totally personalized transportation package. They're looking at it from a broader perspective. They're not just buying convenience and mobility, they're also buying a sense of well-being, a traveling lifestyle that they desire, and they're making a statement about themselves with their purchase. It's all part of the end result the client desires. So finding add-on products and services is a matter of looking at what your client wants to experience as a whole from buying what it is you're selling on the front end. For example, I recognize that with my mind map training program, that my clients in my mind map training program are interested in accelerated learning. I also recognize that they're interested in business and personal development information. I also realize that they're interested in brain enhancement or functionality to be able to think faster. They're also interested in focus. The list goes on and on and on and on. And you could do this with anything. With my IT business, I recognize that they didn't just want to make sure that their computers were virus free. They wanted to make sure that they were getting the security to prevent themselves from getting any malware or like some ransomware installed. I also recognize that they wanted to have better wireless signal. I also recognize that their internal processes and how they stored their software, not their software, but their files and everything was not efficient, and they were looking for better ways of doing things. So then I would move into consulting and optimizing their processes. I also recognized that they had other office needs that weren't being fulfilled, and I had connections with others that could provide those office services, and I'd work percentage deals. So you can keep thinking about the experience as a whole. I also recognize that they are business owners, so they're interested in increasing marketing and selling. So we would have consultation sessions, which would then move into implementing email marketing systems. And then I realized that just because they were implementing email marketing systems doesn't mean that they were necessarily going to do it in the most optimal way. I would look at if they were selling something offline, could they have done it in a way they could sold it online through automatic buying, so they wouldn't have to do an offline transaction, which people couldn't participate in at their own leisure and time. So there's a lot of ways of looking at this. Really reflecting upon what your client is trying to do and what they're trying to experience will give you all kinds of ideas of different kinds of add-on products and services, which again, might not necessarily happen at the point of sale. It could happen later on. Like let's say today they buy this, but once they get acclimated to your product or service, they come back and they end up buying something else later on that complements. So here are some ways. How? List all the products and services you sell that produce a greater result for the client when used together or in a logical progression. Try offering various combinations and package and upsell with these. Okay, testing, very important. Then list what I call the cycle of product/service life. All the products or services other people sell that precede, parallel, complement, or follow the use of your product or service. Find the companies who sell these products and services and see what kind of distribution, outright purchases, host beneficiary deals you can make with them, with each, in order to add their items to your client's sale. Okay, so this is where if you can't come up with the product or services yourself, you can partner with others that have already created it. Think of any logical services your client could benefit from after purchasing your product or service, like tech support, extended warranty, annual or semi-annual maintenance, pickup or delivery. Could you provide any of these services to increase the value of your transaction? If you have nothing else to add, consider offering a larger, more deluxe version of your product or service at a greater price. So every time someone makes a purchase from you or your organization, you have an opportunity to increase the size of that purchase through upsells. It's not just to add to your short-term profit. It's all about you helping your client get the optimal benefit or advantage out of the transaction they're going to do with you anyways. All right. So this is not about like, how can you get more money? Again, we're thinking about they're going to buy. What else can we add as an option? They don't have to take it. That will further produce the results for them. So if you sell fitness products like supplements, maybe an upsell could be workout programs. One of the things we did when I did a partnership is I used to have a speed reading blog, speedreadingzone.com, which I ended up selling over to Iris Reading. I ended up getting a huge following on there and a lot of SEO clout. And I was an affiliate for Iris Reading. A company called Ace Reader approached me, emailed me and said, would you like to promote Ace Reader to your audience? Now, I had an agreement, and we've got a very good relationship with Iris Reading, so I didn't want to violate that relationship. So I did a kind of a triangulation. I called up Iris Reading, and I said, look, a company called Ace Reader sells software. You guys sell training. How can we work? Let's get on a three-way call. How can we work something out where we can all benefit? And what happened was that Iris Reading now offers a branded version of Ace Reader as part of their suite of products and services and upsells. And on the flip side, Ace Reader, when you buy it, I don't know if this still exists, we did this for a while, offers an upsell to take the iris reading workshops or the online training. So even though they are competitors, we were able to connect in a way that was mutually profitable for everyone, thus increasing the average size of sale per client, but doing it in a way that added more value to the client and added more profits. Number 3, increase the number of times clients return and buy again. Okay, so after you have created that transaction and the upsells and you've increased that, well, we want them to come back and buy again, because it's actually easier to resell to an existing client, provided that you had established the like and trust during the first transaction. If you sold them some garbage, they're going to not come back. I've had this experience many times where you go to like a restaurant or whatever, and the service wasn't good. I'm pretty picky on this kind of stuff, and I realized that the more you study these elements of strategy of preeminence, for example, which is a J. Abraham philosophy, the more astute you become in looking for quality service, and the more you're going to appreciate it. And if you don't get the quality service and treatment, you're not going to go back to the same place again. So if you created a good experience, they're going to come back. But if you don't, then they're not going to come back. And when I have a bad experience, I don't go back. And that's the case with a lot of people. So clients stop buying essentially for 3 reasons. We got to make sure we're not doing these things. Number 1 is they stop buying temporarily and they just never get around to dealing with you again. Out of sight, out of mind. A trite phrase, but very true. Once you stop dealing with a company, no matter how valuable the product or service, you tend to fall into a different buying pattern. There's ways around this. Email notifications, follow-up letters, every once in a while calling your clients, depending on the size of the transaction. You might not, if it's like a $15 transaction, it might not be worth your time to call every client. But a dentist office that I go to in Toronto has great systematic implementation of calling up every now and then and having a conversation. And a lot of times that reminds people that they got to see their dentist again and so forth. Number 2, they become dissatisfied. There are hundreds of reasons a client becomes unhappy and stops doing business with a company. But the most important thing to realize is that rarely did you intentionally offend or dissatisfy the client. Okay, there's many reasons why, and we can work on some of these things, and some of the things are beyond our control. But the more things that we can work on to increase post-buying satisfaction, one of the things that I like to do is follow up with greater material, more content, different kinds of things, more service, whatever. The client situation has changed to the point that they no longer can benefit from your product or service. Now that's understandable. However, you do have a list of people that have that relationship with you. They just don't use your product or service. So you could do what I did, is that when I built my IT business with the 50 plus clients and then many, many different prospects and so forth, after I moved into consulting and started doing internet business and stuff like that, I would reach out to a handful of them who no longer benefited of my IT product or service because I had moved them over to another provider, sold the client, or they no longer needed the IT service. And I still had the like and trust with them, but I was able to sell them other things that they were interested in the realm of business building. Adding additional related offers to the product line is a great way of ensuring that they come back again. And you could do this that are very creative ways of doing things. I mean, look, in the direct sense, if you're an IT service provider, you can add things like maintenance contracts and you can upsell to other things. But areas that are very not so obvious, but are still very profitable is by looking at what other things that they buy for their business and working deals and broker those deals. So for example, even down to the point where, let's say you have a whole bunch of clients that buy certain kind of products and services. Let's take IT services as another example, because that's familiar to me. Now, a lot of times they need websites. Those companies need websites, so they come to you. Or you could reach out to them and say, look, we also do websites. Sometimes they need security systems in their offices. Again, you could offer that. It doesn't seem very related to IT. In a way, it's kind of related. You can broker and connect the deals. Now, another thing is business consulting services, marketing consulting services, doing different kinds of things like optimizing their processes, or even connecting them with brokers of certain kinds of services that they use occasionally, like travel services or admin assistance. So you've got a pool of IT clients, 50 of them, and you recognize that they could outsource some of their activities for greater return on investment and increase their profits if they went to an outsourcing firm, but they've never dealt with that stuff before and they don't know how to do it. Well, you could either set up your own outsourcing firm or you can partner with a company that has an outsourcing firm, and you can connect the two and take a percentage of the deal and broker the deal and also support the deal, not just like take a percentage and just leave, but support the client through their transition of outsourcing some of that administration work. Add-ons and cross-selling. Offer your clients alternatives that perform better and which are in your client's best interest, not yours. Again, it's always about the client experience, not about how much money you can take out of your clients, but how much value you can add in exchange for money. A cross-selling is introducing to the client an additional product or service that will aid or increase the results of the transaction with you or your company. So now that we looked at 3 ways, and by the way, there's way more elements of improving in these areas, which are covered in the books, let's get into some other key concepts that I want to cover that I pulled from the book, and let's get into some discussion. So direct mail, right? So nowadays, people aren't really using direct mail, actually mailing out stuff, but it's still a very powerful form of marketing. And what we focus on now, and I like to focus on also, is email marketing, because this is a huge area of my emphasis. Email marketing is very powerful because let's look at it from the book's perspective. How would you like to have 1,000 or 10,000 tireless salesmen, saleswomen working around the clock, calling on a maximum number of the absolutely most qualified prospects for your product or service and never forgetting to make any selling point or any closing argument? Direct mail refers to all written material used to communicate with prospects and clients, including sales letters, emails, brochures, and proposals. You're able to segment who you're targeting. You can adjust the copy specifically to speak to their pains and frustrations. And this is where learning copywriting is very important. And you could send that same letter, that same email out to 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 15, 20,000 people to keep in contact with them, to buy, to take that first transaction with you. First, you get them onto your mailing list, you build a relationship, they take that first transaction. And then when they take that first transaction, you can offer some upsells to increase the size of transaction with the client. And then after they buy, you can segment them and put them on another email list, which offers more value, further educates them on the product that they buy, builds more like and trust, and compels them to take the next step to buy the next level thing that you have to offer. Sales letters are also the most powerful prelude to telephone marketing efforts. Sending a sales letter ahead of a phone call can increase the effectiveness of the call itself by 1,000%. So different ways of doing this. You could use an email or a letter that's sent to someone as a prelude to calling them up and not saying stuff like, that sounds very passive, like I'm following up. We're not going to get into the language patterns and stuff like that, but think of this as a conversational way of doing things in a more automated fashion that is more scalable, but it's still focusing on personal touch and value. There's a sweet spot. Okay, direct mail. Next is maximizing what you have. Testing everything. Think of your business as all these elements that make up the whole. Okay, revenue generating. Let's take revenue generating. All these elements to your revenue generating model. And then break those revenue generating model elements down into sub-processes and so forth. Actually create a lucid chart. This is one of the things I do with my clients. So we actually map out their whole business and map out the sub-elements. Why? Because those sub-elements are the areas that you optimize. And then you test them against variations. Let's talk about this. It's not unusual when you test and compare the effectiveness of one approach against another for the superior approach to outperform the inferior one by as much as 10 or 20 times. Now, this is where we get into that whole geometric thing again. So think about a sales letter, for example. If your headline, which is designed to get the attention, is getting the attention of only 10% of the people that you position it to, well, what if you increase that by 20%? Now you got 30% of the people getting it. So let's say it was 100 people. Now 30 people are actually going to pay attention to reading the body of the sales letter. The statistical probability that the buying decision is going to happen goes up higher provided that you meet the other copy elements. So you can see how each one of those things have a huge impact on leverage. And it's essentially one of J. Abraham's philosophies, leverage marketing, by optimizing each of those little tiny areas. And there's tons of them. Geometrically, your results increase. I've seen people test different variables in their advertising, websites, sales letters, live sales, presentations, guaranteed, USP, and price points increase 500%, 1,000%, 2,000%, have resulted just by changing from one approach to another. In other words, you might be producing only 1/5 of the results, sales, income, or profits you could be getting with the same or even less effort and cost. So we talked about earlier about highest and best use and leverage. And we talked about earlier producing greater results with very little effort, okay, just changing a headline. Now, this is possible because good direct response marketers know this, and this is why they get paid the big bucks. And oftentimes they work on percentage because they realize that they can make far more by working on a percentage on success of a campaign because they're very good at knowing what to test and optimize. And they do this, you can say it's kind of like a trade secret, by optimizing one very tiny element that may seem insignificant to someone who's not very astute with sales and marketing. One company that apparently didn't test enough is the maker of Excedrin. Several years ago, they ran a multi-million-dollar national advertising campaign showing different above-average headaches and assigning them numbers, like Excedrin headache number 9, Excedrin headache number 23, when Excedrin relieved the pain. The campaign created such name recognition that was seemingly very successful, but in fact, sales went down. The company later learned that people were aware of the campaign and said that Excedrin was an excellent, stronger than average pain reliever, and if they had a severe headache, they would definitely take Excedrin. But if they had just an average headache, Excedrin was a stronger medication than they needed. So they would take a milder pain reliever like an aspirin. The company could have saved millions of dollars and not lost market share had they had done one simple thing, which is test. So let's look at some examples here. This is a very, very, very astute example. Before Henry Ford would hire anyone for an important position, he would have lunch with them. If the potential employee would salt the food before tasting it, Mr. Ford would not hire the person. The reason? Salting the food before tasting it indicated the person would implement a plan before testing it. Ergo, not job. Was Henry Ford too extreme with his hiring policy based on salting before testing? Maybe. But then again, Henry Ford was America's first billionaire. And now, when you get better at understanding different elements of persuasion, making decisions like this is quite common. Some might consider it overthinking, but when it comes to understanding that each and every element plays a role, then you find what works for you. So there are many different things that we can test to see what kind of results that we get. And it's worth breaking down our system of our business, our revenue system, into an entire process, mapping it out and breaking it down into sub-processes. Let's talk about lifetime client value, another important component to this. Let's say your average new client brings you an average profit of $75 the first sale. He or she repurchased 3 more times a year with an average reorder amount of $300. And on each $300 reorder, you make $150 gross profit. Now, with the average patronage life lasting 2 years, every new client is worth $975. You could theoretically afford to spend up to $975 to break in on a client and to bring in a client and still break even. Why is this important? The reason why this is important is because a lot of people want to jump on paid advertising. Now, I think paid advertising, Facebook marketing, paid advertising, or Google ads, or YouTube ads, or whatever, is great. You can test a lot of things really fast. Well, if you understand what your lifetime client value is, then you can make a very educated guess on how much you are willing to spend per click, per lead, per conversion. Okay? And when most people they go out and run a campaign, they're not looking at these numbers. So the more numbers you have, especially lifetime client value, the better you are at making educated decisions. Now think about this for a moment. If you realize that you could spend $975, well, there's a lot of options a lot of things you could do here. You can pay a higher percentage on commission. You can pay higher referral fees. Now, it's not uncommon for really, really successful, astute business people to actually pay more on commission on the first sale than the actual first sale generates. For example, say what they sell in the front end is a $47 product. And because of lifetime customer value, they recognize that each client is worth $975. Well, they can reasonably pay somebody $100, 200% profit, okay, and take that referral or that affiliate from another company who's only offering $47 for commission, which is 100% commission, which sounds very generous. Or some of them, don't understand this and haven't figured it out in their equation, think that they can only pay like 50% commission and maybe only offer like $20. What's more compelling, you being an affiliate or a salesperson, to make $200 or $20? Testing. Okay, we talked about testing and the importance of it. Testing everything. It's amazing how few companies ever test any aspect of their marketing and compare it to something else. They bet their destiny on arbitrary, subjective decisions and conjecture. Let's look at some examples here again to really look at some areas we can test on, because testing, you can keep yourself busy day and night on testing, and you can test conservatively, but let's get some ideas here. Testing different ways you can say the same thing, testing different copy, testing the pull of one magazine versus another, testing one mailing list against another, testing one radio time slot against another, testing one offer against another, price versus another. We call this split testing. You can do a split test, and a lot of like software like ClickFunnels and a lot of tools out there offer split testing, and this is how you optimize. This is the industry standard for optimization. You test one theory against the other, and you run a 50-50 A-B split test, and you see which one performs better. And if it's a considerable margin of performance, one variation versus another, then the likelihood of that being successful over the long term is higher, or we need to then look at why that one tested better and what were the reasons behind it to give us more educated data of how we can optimize other elements of our campaign. One guarantee against another, one sales presentation versus another, one direct mail package versus another. Make a list of all the major elements or variables in your business or career activities that produce measurable results. Include all regular situations where persuasion or influence are important to your success. So sales, presentations, board presentations, phone agreements, advertising, catalogs, sales letters, emails, and conduct and attitude of your order the conduct and attitude of your order department, client services, technical support, accounts receivable, etc. Then identify the key transactional elements of each of those activities, like the headlines, the openings, the sales, the closes, unique selling propositions. Then come up with at least two alternative ways or approaches to those activities. Create at least two different ways to say or communicate your message, different pricing strategies, different positioning, different presentations, etc. Then conservatively and modestly test these different approaches against your current control approach. You'll be surprised of how many of your new tests outperform your old standards. Find every process in your business or career that could be improved and focus on making small incremental or large exponential improvements in each process. If you do that, the combined effect will be dramatic and geometric. So testing is so important, and that's like a thinking differently right there. Most businesses do not see the elements that make up the whole, don't take the time to break down. Why? Because it requires work, it requires discipline, it requires effort, but it's also highest and best use. If you can do that, then your results are going to increase dramatically because you're taking an educated view towards business. And it's surprising that even people who appear to be very educated in business don't do a lot of testing and don't measure metrics. It's kind of, in a way, mind-boggling that it doesn't exist, but you'll be surprised. Not a lot of people look at their business as a system, as a process from start to finish, and break down each element into sub-processes, etc. So we're going to talk a little bit about sales letters, and we're going to get into some discussion on it, but there's much more to it. But here are some tips to get you started, as well as, referring back to the book, there's more details on this. So specific components of sales letters should contain. Number one is a headline. Okay, get the reader's attention with the headline. The letter must show clear and distinctive advantages in the body copy. The letter has to prove or validate the claim of benefits or advantages through factual examples, comparisons, analysis, testimonials, and credentials. The letter must persuade the reader to reach out and seize the advantage you promise, call to action. The letter must motivate the reader to act, respond, write, order, or come in to the store or whatever it's designed to do. And next, another nonlinear way of thinking application that can be added to your business complementary that is not going to necessarily bring you money, but unless you were to do triangulation, is barter. Trading your products or services for things your business needs or wants is called business barter. Barter gives you amazing ability to vastly increase your purchasing power, sometimes as much as 5 or 10 times over. Done right, barter also gives you the effect of having almost unlimited capital. It's like having a blank check to fill in. It allows you to acquire products and services now, but pay for them much later. And the longer you take to pay, the less it ends up costing you. You can make barter a major factor in your business growth strategy. So you can connect with a person that has access or has a product or service, let's say, has a product or service, and you offer a product or service, and you can do a trade. Now, I've done this many times. I've traded for places to stay, for cars to borrow, and otherwise I would have been renting. When I was in Mexico, I stayed in beautiful places in exchange for barter for consulting services on marketing and so forth. I've traded for IT services, barter. Like, there's lots of things you could do for barter. And here's a cool thing. It's called triangulation. Okay, this is where you take 3 people, for example, or even more. And what you do is you take person A and you trade for services. So let's say I will trade you $1,000 worth of consulting services for $1,000 worth of rental credits at your hotel. I then take those rental credits and I sell it to person C for $800, and they use those rental credits, and then I realize the $800 profit, considering that it was easier for me to sell the $800 rental credits than it would be to sell the $1,000 consulting service. Okay, see how that works? Lots of creative ways of doing things. So this is a very important book if you're interested in nonlinear, creative ways of growing your business. As pragmatic as the 3 ways of growing your business, as simple as it sounds on the surface, most people don't understand the value of it. And if you focus on these 3 areas and you apply the strategies and concepts we've covered in this video as well as what's in this book, so not only will this help you think differently in the sense of cool ways of doing things, but those ways of thinking can actually be applied to improve the 3 ways to grow your business, which is increase the number of clients, average size per clients, and the number of times the clients buys in return in various different combinations. And it makes business a lot of fun, okay? Turns it into a puzzle and a very profitable one. So I recommend this book, and I recommend really watching this video like 5 or 6 times and going and applying what you've learned. That's the key thing, is application. Thank you very much for watching. If you want a copy of the mind map, the link is in the description. I will talk to you soon. Take care.